Hi, my name's Keith Cooper of Northlight Images. I do a lot of printer testing, and a while ago I was asked what's the best printer if you're a photographer wanting to get into printing your photos. This goes for making art prints and things as well, but in general I'm concentrating on photos here for photographers. And best is a tricky thing to say, but I said that the Epson ET-8550, this one here, was the best printer, in my opinion, for getting into printing photos. Whole host of reasons, and I'm going to go through some of those. But importantly, I was also asked just recently, do I still agree with that? Is this still the best? Has something better come along? Now, I'm going to go through various aspects of printing, and I will come back to what other options are available. And how that's changed, how that might change in other things. And I'll also have a few tips about using the 8550 here, because this is one that we spent, end of last year, our own money on, and actually bought one because, yes, if you want the quick takeaway, everything I said there about the 8550 is still true. Nothing has replaced it. There are other printers, and I say we'll come back to that, because there are sound reasons you might not want to use this, not least of which it's a 13-inch printer. If you want to do wider than 13-inch or roll paper or things like that, then there are better printers for it. They're more expensive to run mostly as well. But when it comes down to it, why do I still say the 8550 is a printer I would happily recommend? Well, I see no sign of it being replaced anytime this year, at least. And I would be surprised, actually, even perhaps early next year, we still won't see a replacement for it. What it does very well. I've produced loads of videos. If you want to know lots more information, I put a link to the main written review that I did for this printer several years ago. The reason I point to that is because being a written review, I can update it over time. That means it has all the latest information on ICC profiles I've made, and that is a key part of getting the best out of this printer. It also covers different aspects of setup, software issues, but I say I'll come back to some tips about using this. But why am I still happy to break the habit of 20 odd years of reviews and actually say, yeah, this is best? Well, there is nothing else similar. If I look, the Canon ink tank printers, and this is an ink tank printer, so you load up the ink from bottles. The Canon versions are smaller, and the Canon versions don't, if you're a Mac user like I am, don't fully support color management properly, which is a bit of a nuisance. If you want that, you want some other ones, but I'll come back to those. So what does this one do? Print quality. This is an interesting mix of inks. It has dye inks, including a dye black, and it has a pigment black ink. And it's the combination of having that pigment black and dye black ink which gives the flexibility for this printer. And that's photo quality. If there are more expensive printers where you will be able to get subtly better quality, better range of inks or something like that. But it's the sort of stuff that almost no one is going to notice. It's the sort of stuff you need to put two prints next to each other under very good lighting to compare them. And since when does most people ever do that? They don't. This is good enough, and that good is pretty good. As I say, it's one of the reasons we got one of them. This is also happens to be an office printer. It's Karen's office printer up in her office, well, when it's up there. And it works as a scanner built in, all the useful bits like that. But as I say, see the review. I've done loads of videos. All the videos are linked from that. I mean, you can find them on YouTube, but it's much easier just to go to the to the written review, and it's got a big long list of all the related videos. One's about black and white, about maintenance tips, things like that, setup, stuff like that. But other useful things, you can use Epson print layout software with this, EPL. Now, the EPL software is very simple to use. I use it for showing demos, got lots of demos of it. Canon, incidentally, has their own version of something similar to that, PPL, which works with their better printers, Pro 200S, Pro 310, Pro 11, so that, but not with the smaller, cheaper printers. black and white on this. This is not a specialist black and white printer, but the combination of inks mean that if you use something like the Epson ABW print mode in EPL, or however you normally print, you can do this from Lightroom and Photoshop, whatever, other software as well for this. It prints black and white very well. I've covered extensively looking at how the differences between the different media settings you get and whether the pigment ink is used on it. But these are two matte black and white test prints and they look fine. If you want a specialist black and white, once again, you're going to probably have to pay more, although if you're willing to take the risk on it, you can get monochrome ink sets to set up for a printer like this. It's not something I've looked at, something I might investigate in the future, but bear in mind that if you put other ink sets in this, so dye-sub inks or something like that, if you put third-party inks, all the profiling goes out the window, as likely does your warranty as well. So it depends how much you want it, but you can do specialised black and white on this, and I know some people have tried it. But it's that pigment and dye-based ink which make the real difference. In terms of paper profiles, when this printer first came out, and it was 5 years ago, and this is why people keep asking me, is it due for replacement? Remember, printers last a lot longer than cameras, and certainly the likes of phones and things like that. The development, the technology, I wouldn't say it's plateaued, but the rate of increase of improvement is not what it was 10, 15 years ago. Profiles, these are the key to getting great looking colour prints out of this. The profiles go with a media setting. Media setting is a type of media that you set on this. In print, I've printed canvas sheets on this. It prints boards. It does all sorts of stuff. But the key to that is making profiles. And to make a profile, I print one of these and I measure it with, as just in the back here, I've been doing some testing. There's a spectrophotometer and I make profiles. All the profiles I've made for this, and that's well over 50 profiles, are available on request. See the notes for it. I don't charge for them, but I do ask for a coffee donation if you find them useful. And that's, there are over 50 of them, lots of different papers. And incidentally, I have had recently people send me packs of paper, or from suppliers and all that, and at the cost of an A3 plus pack of paper, so I can put it into my library of papers, as it were, I will make profiles and stuff like that. More suppliers are making profiles. The likes of Red River Paper in the States, they do profiles for this. Some UK suppliers are starting to do it. But Epson originally advertised this very much as a home office type printer and never really pushed the photo side of it. It just works very well. In terms of photo printing, if you're looking at colour, well, it'll print on all the normal sort of luster type papers. There's a borderless print. Incidentally, don't do lots and lots of borderless. If you do, you will need to consider cleaning the insides of the printer often. Borderless makes a mess in any printer if you do a lot of it. Much better to print with borders in the longer term. But if you need it will print borderless. But I say that caveat against borderless printing goes for whatever printer I've tested. I've done a video about the cleaning and general maintenance of it. But in terms of the print quality of it, the absolute best looking colour pictures on this, for the right subjects, are printed on this. This is a Permajet paper. That's their titanium gloss 300, and you'll see when I move it around, catching the light, the gloss feel to it. It's a metallic paper, and the prints from this, and this is an old disk drive that I pulled apart to take some photos. Is testing some macro photography stuff, but these have a glow about them that is almost like looking at backlit transparencies, or a feeling of that luminosity that you get off slides. It isn't. It's because of the paper and the dye inks, but because they're dye inks, you don't get any gloss differential. So this is a smooth finish for it. But that paper just has a lovely finish. Conventional luster and gloss pictures will print well on it as well, and matte art papers. Slight warning on there on thicker matte art papers. This does take them, but I have heard that some printers are, for thicker media, a little prone to making slight marks on the prints where they've run through on the rollers here. Now, this appears to be something that just a few printers show. If I had it, it's one of the things I checked for when I got this printer. If this one would have done it, I would have said, no, printer's not good enough. Test it on an Epson paper. If it shows the effect on an Epson paper, you know, demand a replacement. These things happen. I'm happy using this. We bought one. I said we paid full price for this, actually bought it properly. It does things like cards, all stuff out. This is printed on a thickish media here. I've used the scanner for scanning artwork, all sorts of stuff. Now, a quick bit on some tips for using it. When you set it up, do make sure you load up the inks before you start up the print. The process is very easy to follow in terms of tipping inks into it. You might think, oh, ink bottles, oh, are they a bit messy? No, they're not. They're sealed at the top, they're keyed, so you can't put the wrong one in the wrong hole. They go in here, the ink tanks fill up and show here the levels on that there. Has a screen, has a touch screen. The front comes out for the prints. It's, you know, it's pretty easy to use. But, you know, there are things. Take care when you're setting it up with the ink bottles. I would say the ink bottles are cheap enough that the temptation, if you're feeling really cheap and you think, well, I'm sorry, these ink bottles are too expensive, that's fine. But it would mean if I was to swap over to third-party inks on this, every one of those 50+ profiles that I've made for printing on this would be rendered inoperable. Well, they will work, but they're just not very good. So, you know, fill it up with inks, take care with it. Now, in terms of size, it's quite compact. I've opened up the bit at the back here. There is a tray at the front here that will take plain paper and small thin photo media. I don't ever use this tray for anything but plain paper. Certainly, it will print plain paper duplex. You have bigger borders on it, but if photo paper in this, I just don't bother with it. It's too much hassle because there's a curved print path that it has to curl it through and it's just much better for, you know, treat the things here as for an office printer. You can load up a stack of thin 6x4 photo paper and it will print things off. It'll do quite nicely, but it's just not the sort of stuff I use this for, but someone else might want to. So these are A3 prints. This is A3+, so that's 13-inch width. You can feed roll paper through it. I've done panoramics. You can feed stuff in through the back. It takes poster board, but you have to feed that in from the back. And remember, you need a lot of space for a 13-inch by 19-inch A3+ bit of poster board. You need that. It goes back quite a bit and has to come through from the back through to the front. So just allow for that when you're thinking of where you're going to put it. That's the general size of it. You get a idea of how much size it takes when it's fully loaded up. How much space you'll need at the back and things like that. That's why, in terms of other options, I said there is a smaller A4 version, or 8.5-inch version of this, the 8500. Pretty much identical, but smaller. Smaller scanner, smaller everything. The difference in price is not that much, and unless you are absolutely cramped for space, get the bigger one. If you've not printed before, if you've only ever printed small prints before, it's difficult sometimes to appreciate how the extra impact you get from a big print like that. And that's only A3, it'll do A3+, so do larger than that even. But that's it. So I mentioned about thick papers, take care with thick papers. The feed, it is, as I say, this is not a commercial printer. So if you're thinking of a printer that you want to print hundreds of prints a day, you may get away with it for a while, but remember, these printers are not made for heavy all day long use. There are bigger printers, more expensive printers available for stuff like that. That's why I say that I use the term best, and it always sticks slightly because I want to say but except, and there are other, and that's why I'll come back to a few other options on it. But it prints very well. In terms of cleaning, people say, oh, if I don't use my inkjet printer often enough, it clogs or something like that. Yeah, any printer will show problems if you don't use it. For an inkjet printer will show problems if you don't use it for any length of time. What I would say, if you'll use something like this intermittently, set a diary reminder for every 2 weeks. And then when that pops up, think, have I printed something on the printer? If not, even a simple nozzle check done on this, you can do that from the display here, even a simple nozzle check on plain paper will suffice to exercise the printer. It just keeps your printer in better condition if you try and use it regularly. Let's say a reminder every 2 weeks, even if you just look at it and think, well, I printed something yesterday, well, that's fine. But it's just that little nudge, because it's easy to forget. If you've not printed something for 2 weeks, it's easier to forget if that's 3 weeks or 4 weeks or something like that. And just having that little reminder works for any printer, by the way, not just this one. For this particular one here, there's a big one here, big Epson P5000 pigment ink printer. For that, I have a weekly reminder that pops up on that, just in case I've not printed anything. It doesn't matter if you miss it a few times, but it's just regularity of printing helps. Use me often is something that ought to be a sticker on the front of printers like this. All printers, Canon, Epson, or other makes as well, and stuff like that. So that's for that. Any other general tips for use of this printer? Just take care of it. Clean it as need be. Watch out for dust build-up. If you're in a very dusty environment, put a cover on it. I just leave it plugged in and it powers itself off. There's no great problem with it. There is a maintenance tank inside that don't bother getting a spare, because they last for absolutely ages and you will get lots of advance warning. It's just a little cartridge that fits in the top here. That. If you move the printer, you can move it easily enough, but if you're going to ship it and it's somewhere where it's going to be bounced about a bit, say in the back of a car or something, there is a little lock device on the head and things that will just stop it. But it warns you about that on the screen. Good screen on it as well. But that's enough about this one. What about some others? Because I'm very aware that the phrase, this is the best printer, well, yeah, may do well on YouTube, but yeah, it's always something, as I say, I always want to go, yes, but. First of all, I mentioned smaller 8500. Canon's ink tank printers, only A4 8.5 inch. Colour management issues on Macs. I've got reviews of all of these. Do have a look. I forgot. The written reviews are always the more comprehensive ones, because as I say, I can update the written ones. This video, once it's published, I can't update it. So if next week, for some reason, Canon or Epson bring out an absolutely astounding printer, I can't put a note on this video saying, oh, by the way, or I can add a note, but I can't change the video content itself. So always check that written stuff. And I do have a full index of all the videos. There's well over 700 videos I've produced on stuff like this and things. And that gets tricky to find what's there. I produced the index as much for my own use as much as anything else, so I would know what was going on. But anyway, bigger printers. If you want 13-inch Canon Pro 200S, the 200 and 200S are pretty much identical. The 310, which I'm waiting to get a 310 from Canon so I can do a full review of it, but I have tested the Pro 300, and the differences between the 300 and the 310 are pretty minimal. Now, they're to do with the ink set, slight changes there, a few more paper sizes and things. But in terms of print quality that you get out of it that anyone will notice, no. The 200S just has slightly different communications on it. The 200 is dye-based inks, and that is currently, if you want the absolute best in dye-based prints, and this titanium gloss paper, by the way, the 300, looks stunning prints for the right images on the Pro 200. If you want that, that's it. But it's got relatively small ink cartridges. And one of the reasons why I recommend this one for people wanting to get into printing is that, and I've talked to people from the printer companies about this, and they don't appreciate this perhaps sometimes, is how much off-putting it is to have to think about ink costs when you're testing things. You need to experiment to do well with this. There's a learning curve for it in editing and all stuff like that, and your photography. And as I've said many times, printing improves my photography, and an image is not perhaps properly finished until it's done as a print. Now, that's not necessarily true. I'm a commercial photographer, so a lot of my stuff is supplied digitally, and I often don't see prints of my work. But in general, a print is the photograph when it comes to it, and I've got lots of stuff looking at this, aspects of doing that. So that's about, yeah, it's 200, excellent for dye base. The 300 or 310 makes very good prints. In particular, it's good on black and white. It handles matte media well. It handles a wide range of media very well. Paper feed on those two Canon ones is very good. If you want, there's a Epson P700. P700, I think, suffers from having very small ink. Well, they're not very small, they're 25mm, relatively small ink cartridges. In comparison to something like this, the places where you'll get a noticeably better performance from the 700 are not that many necessarily, and this one has got the ink tanks, so you can experiment, and it's much cheaper to use. Now, the 700 has a lot of other features as well. I've got detailed reviews of it. Beyond that, we start getting into bigger printers. 17-inch printers. Well, this P5000 is a few years old now, but the P5300 or 5370 in North America is a pigment ink printer, and that is designed to print all day long. Likewise, the Pro 1100 is a much more, heavier print. Literally, it is a heavier duty printer. This one weighs about, I think, 70 odd pounds. The Pro 1100 weighs about 35 pounds, and yeah, they're both on the limit. This one's very much on the limit of what I can lift and move about. These are commercial printers you're getting into that, and you're paying for that as well. Although do remember, you get much bigger ink cartridges, so the proportional price goes down, but you're paying more for the printers on it. What about small printers? I've not looked at many small printers because many of them, well, the Canon ones, I looked at some of the G series, and hence the issues on colour management on Macs, but they're okay. But I'm really looking, when I said best here, this is for photographers, and I'm thinking in photographers who care about the quality of their images. This printer will produce better prints, once you know how to use it, and remember all these things take some learning, will produce better prints than just sending your pictures off to be printed. If you want to do very large prints, well, you might want to get a big printer, but maybe send stuff off there. But you will learn all the details of how to prepare your images and get the best from them by printing something like this, and then maybe just using a big send out service, for a remote printing service for bigger stuff, once you know they're okay. For people who say, I don't want to print, well, good for you. If you don't want to print, you don't want to print. What I'm saying is that from my point of view, if somebody comes along to me and says, look, I'm really into photography, I've done a few prints, had a few, I want to make some real photographs, this is the one I'm happy to suggest. Now, I do not sell printers. I do not have any links or anything for this. If Canon bought out next month an A3 Plus ink tank printer and it supported profiles on the Mac, then it would probably give this thing a run for its money. But at the moment, and this is the question people asked, is this still the printer? I suggest this is it. If you want cheaper, well, there are lots of cheaper ones. I've covered some, but I don't tend to look at that. I'm after print quality. That's what matters. That's why I test so many papers, and that's why when certainly this particular paper here, when I looked at this, the results that come out, and I printed these borderless just for impact when I was doing testing. I don't normally print borderless much. A metallic paper like that with the right images just jumps out at you. Anyway, if you've got any questions, I hope that's been of use. So yeah, the short version of this is, yes, still this one. Thanks for watching. Bye.